Okay, so I'm going to open with Adobe Photoshop from Capture One. That will open the project in Camera Raw. Automatically, I always do a lens correction for aberration and distortion. And then I usually will hit Auto to see what Capture or Camera Raw will do for my image, and I usually will tweak it from there, adjusting exposures and highlights and whatnot. In some cases, I will also do my white balance from here. And sometimes I will go in and adjust various colors. I always add some dehaze to my image, and I tend to increase vibrance and reduce saturation. And then I'll go into my color sliders and will adjust specific colors. Select Open Image, and it will open up in Photoshop. Now this one I didn't have a lot of cleaning to do or anything because they're little berries and they are what they are. But I always make a copy of my background layer, and I label that my working layer. And I don't touch my background layer. I leave that in case of an emergency. On this image after that, I will check my levels. My levels are fine, so I'm not going to make any adjustments there. Then I'm going to do a curves layer for both my highlights and for my lowlights. And then that way I can selectively go in and increase some saturation in the colors and brighten other areas that maybe need a little bit of brightening without wreaking havoc on the original image. Some of these adjustments seem pretty drastic, but I always invert the masks so I can then paint in the lightness and darkness that I want to use at a reduced rate. So I can take my opacity of my brush down to about 20% in some cases, sometimes maybe a little bit more, and my flow I usually have around 80. And then I can, just paint in the areas that I want to add in the darker color and the areas I need to brighten up as well. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Just remember, because you've inverted your mask and it's now black, you need to paint with a white brush in order to paint in the effect that you're looking for. I'm going to speed up this process so that you're not forced to sit there and stare at your screen while I go through this. Okay, and now that that's done, those were the lowlights. Now I'm going to do the same with my highlights, but only on selective parts again, like the shine that's on the berries from the liquid. And again, I'll speed this process up. Once I'm done that, I am going to select all the visible layers, and I'm going to do stamped visible, and that's done by using your Command, Option, Shift, and E on a Mac, or Control, Option, Shift, and E on a PC, and that gives you a new stamped layer to work off of. I'm then going to take it into the Topaz Studio into my clarity, like I said, and then I will choose macro. There you can test out different effects. And when you come across one that you like, you can favorite that, or you can create your own or fine-tune any of the presets that are there. My favorite one out of these that I decided to use and stick with was the Macro Morning Dew, the very last one. So here I'm going to create another stamp visible layer of the previous layers that I had used to create this one. just because I like to work off of a copy. So I've got the stamp visible again, and then the layer above is the one that I just completed in Topaz Studio, and I'll work off of that layer. So I've labeled it Color Boost because it just added a real pop of color. And then I duplicate that layer again, and this is where I do my sharpening. I don't do it in the most common of methods. I always go in under unsharp mask, and I will usually set the amount at around 100, and I usually set my radius anywhere from about 1 to 1.3. In this case, I'm going to use an amount of about 98, I guess. Then I click OK, and then I open up Unsharp Mask again. This time I invert my selections, so I will take my radius up to about anywhere from about 80 to 90, and then I take the amount and I increase that roughly somewhere between 10 and 20. This time I'm going to go with about 13. And that also adds a level of dehaze to my image. So I've sharpened it the first time around, and the second time around it adds a little bit of dehaze. And you can see that if you click that layer on and off. And if it's too much, you can always reduce the opacity of that layer, or you can throw a mask on it and just paint in specific effects. And now I'm going to save the image back into my Capture One by doing Command-Shift-S, and I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file. And so that's how I went from that to this with my macro berry shop.